What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Insurrection Inc. podcast. We want to thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Insurrection Inc. podcast. I'm Menace, aka Andrew, finally making a return after a long hiatus of just not wanting to show up. Today I'm joined with the usual cast, minus one or two people. Actually, yeah, Stratty's not here either. I have Jay, Peter, Monty, and Porter. Porter is on the verge of collapse. Jay is just angry about everything as usual. Peter's having a mental breakdown over statistics, and Monty is, well, he's here.
Monty just exists. Yeah, he's not in the void yet, but he's like near it.
Today's episode, we want to try to steer clear of current events, so we couldn't think of anything else to talk about. So the only thing we decided that we came to a consensus on is for me to start off with a topic that I got from a group chat that I was added into with a bunch of communists. I took the liberty to actually ask them something about their ideology instead of just assuming things. And I asked them how resources, because these are ancoms, basically, not like this Stalinist or whatever. So
what's the difference?
They say there's a difference, so I mean, I can at least respect that much. But crap, I just went. Okay, I remember now. I asked them like how resources would be distributed under their society, rather than, of course, we know how it would be distributed under a capitalist one, just wherever the money goes, essentially, based on supply and demand. And of course, then the off left one would just be whatever the state says is to go, but apparently in an ANCOM one, even though anarchy is supposed to be without government, they would have little democracies on their communes, which either the resemblance comes from national anarchism or national anarchism gets it from ANCOM, but it says about 150 people would be in each commune. So that means urbanites wouldn't exist, which is kind of base. But it would be just like, it'd be like a localism thing, almost like city states, which I thought was at least interesting and made a little bit of sense, but then it gets to a point of overconsumption. So I guess I just wanted to ask you guys what y'all thought about that, since it's kind of different from the state will decide where everything goes type deal. Of course, I kind of already know y'all's opinions. You're going to say, well, that's stupid. Just supply and demand is better. But like,
yeah.
Let's get into some detail on how that probably wouldn't work, since y'all are more economically fluent than I am.
I've got a historical example for that right off the bat.
Go for it.
The first colony over here in the United States. Where was that? Roanoke? Where they collectivized everything in the town.
That was the Pilgrims.
Yeah, but what was the place that they
Roanoke was the one that like just disappeared off.
Yeah. No, so which is the one where it was like the first settlement here?
It was like Jamestown. The Plymouth Jamestown was... It was the... Jamestown was like the economical one, and the...
So then was it Plymouth that went full communist?
Pretty sure.
Well, yeah, the Puritans were kind of commie-ish, but not in
so
the same ways.
The Puritans didn't want any of the farms to be private property. So they had like a communal farm, and for the first 7 years, they almost starved to death because of how poorly this very small colony, I'm sure it was less than 150 people, could not grow enough food sufficiently to feed the community. And they were very adamant about making sure that there was no private property or profit incentives or anything in growing the farm. And they almost fucking died. I mean, the first American colony almost fucking perished because of this shit. And then it happened that they legalized like small backyard gardens free to grow your food in. And then those started producing at such a surplus that it grew into full-on privatized farms. And then they were able to survive. But I
thought the whole thing with the Pilgrims is like they didn't know how to grow because they were just stupid, and the Indians came in and helped them out.
That's like the elementary school story. These people, maybe they didn't know how to grow, but in reality, with the Plymouth colony, it was that they knew how to grow, but since there was no way for them to know what to grow, how to direct it, they fucking starved. So, communist starving joke goes back to the 1600s.
Yeah, they had common property before, and then the governor, William Bradford, decided to assign each family a parcel of land, and that solved the problem.
That's something new.
Yeah, so even in your 150-person and Cambodia communes, you're gonna fucking starve. I mean, the Israeli kibbutzim, they work somewhat, but it's still I can't see an entire society structured around this.
Oh, and it also doesn't help that they were also very adamant about work abolition. So saying if you didn't want to work, you didn't have to. Which I thought was weird. They elaborated on it, saying there's other ways to contribute to society rather than just straight up working on a farm. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like people who make music would be entertainment for people. But like, what if the people like me who would rather, if given the opportunity, would just sit there the whole time and play video games all day and not have to work?
Actually, no.
What would you do about that? Like, would you
Well,
just outlaw video games?
Yes.
Prim?
Yes. I hate bringing up current events, but Bernie Sanders dropped out this week, and fun fact, he was so lazy that he got kicked off a commune back in the 70s.
You're lying.
No, I'm not lying.
No, that's true.
He legitimately did not want to work. He just wanted to debate politics all day and write, and he never contributed shit. Like, they tried to get him to do some work to contribute something. Nobody wanted his writing. Nobody wanted his political debates, and he got kicked off a commune.
You gotta be lying. Please
Look
don't.
it
Where
up.
was this?
Look it
Was
up
Oh
right
this
now.
my god, hold on.
Jay,
This was
what
like up in
country was this?
Here in the United
Oh.
States. So, like, up in Vermont or
Wow.
something.
Hmm.
Look it up. This is pure facts. And people have, like, from that commune have come out and said it. Yeah, this dude was a sack of shit. He did not want to contribute anything. He is the definition of a free rider.
Oh my god.
Can we
boy.
address the
He was
idea of
too
being
much of a
anti-work
hippie
in
for the
general?
hippies, too.
Oh, yeah, we can address the idea of this. Such
Because
a,
I see
You
that
want-
in like Ancom bios on Twitter and Instagram pretty commonly now.
So your own bio?
Shut up, Monty.
Yeah, I think the Ancom really has not been speaking enough about this topic. We need his expertise here.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, now
Porter,
I'm not
sorry.
going to do it.
Oh, okay, typical anti-war communist.
I'm kidding. Okay. So it goes back to Say's law, which refers to what's his first name? Jean-Baptiste Say. That's the name. He's a French economist, or was a French economist back kind of before the Austrians. He was a proto-Austrian, and his law was basically that consumption is a function of our production, if that makes sense. Like, we can only consume what we have produced, which makes sense. Like, that's obvious, it seems like, but a lot of people still miss that. You can't consume something you haven't produced. So if you don't work and you can't produce anything, then there's nothing to consume. You can't just live without working. Like, work is required. And even when we have a fully automated economy, which I don't think is anywhere near possible right now, but may eventually be possible in the far future. Even then, we still have to have people who organize production, decide what to produce and how and when. And so there's still work to be done. You can't completely abolish work without also abolishing consumption, which means you die.
Lol, okay, capitalist. You just want people to work or starve.
Yes.
God,
Unironically.
In what system do you not fucking work in some way, contributing something to society? Even if it's not like farm labor or industrial labor, like, the artist is still ideally producing something that's of value to somebody. He's
To somebody,
working.
at least, yeah.
Yeah, he's working.
No, it also doesn't help that when I was in that group chat and I was explaining to them the very basic idea that to its core, capitalism is, or at least the free market, since I had to differentiate between the free market and capitalism for them.
Okay.
So that at least would listen to my conversation. They, where was I going with this? Swear to God, I'm like an old man.
Oh.
Joe Biden moment. Joe
Yeah.
Biden moment.
What was it?
You mind if I butt in with something while you think about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because there's this thing communists always say about capitalism, and this is something that they always view capitalism as being. It's when there's basically free markets and wage labor. Like, you can't have capitalism without people working for wages. That doesn't really make that much sense, because you could have people working without wages, but like, I don't like how they basically determine anything that has people working for a salary, let's say, is wage labor, and then it's stealing of their surplus value, and then they just make that connection that, oh, if it has a surplus value being stolen, then it's immoral or something. Like that's their whole
Fucking surplus
argument.
value. Oh my
And
god,
it gets
dude.
really confusing.
It was about wages.
Dude,
instead of
oh my
income,
god.
So thank you, Peter,
Yes,
for interjecting. Since I remember now, thanks to you. No, it was about like I gave the very basic examples. Like, okay, so there's a mine and there's miners in it, and they were collecting minerals. Well, the individual miners have chosen to work there, but since they don't need the minerals they're mining directly, they'd rather just take a currency. And they were like, no, that's bad. They're getting surplus value stolen. Like, but they chose to take that amount of currency in
Yeah.
exchange for the minerals they dig up. How was that? They chose that. They're like, well, then you can't negotiate on unequal grounds. I'm like, well, otherwise they wouldn't be working there. If they didn't like
Yeah.
that pay, they wouldn't be working there.
Yeah. Okay, so Rothbard talks about this in Man, Economy, and State, where he describes how the entrepreneur works. The worker has no direct benefit out of what he's working for. I mean, unless he's making an iPhone, then what's a worker that's making an iPhone going to get? He needs one iPhone. Everything else he produces, he doesn't need. He's getting a forward salary because the entrepreneur does not get the profit until it's sold. He is the one who puts in all the investment all the way up to the selling process. The worker is just there for the process of putting it together, and he gets his forward salary. So even if the business goes under, then the worker was still paid while the entrepreneur is out of pocket on this shit. The entrepreneur is the one taking all the risk.
Oh, speaking about that though, how does that they don't understand that. What if a business is making a loss? Like, wouldn't the workers technically their surplus value be negative, and they would actually have to pay into the company or not even receive anything? Because, like, I don't understand how a business would even work if it's owned collectively. Because the workers, they're mining coal, right? But the coal's nobody wants to buy their coal, so it ends up operating like their expenses are just more than what they actually make. So would the workers have to contribute some of their money to the business under a communist society? Because otherwise, then where would the money come from?
There wouldn't be money in a communist. There wouldn't be money in a communist society. There's just no money.
So it would be resources then. But how would you?
No, that's the thing. Since there's work abolition and surplus value technically doesn't matter at that point, since you're not being stolen from through wage slavery, you just kind of get over it. You still take what you need from other people, even though your contribution to society just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and take it from somebody who my family runs their own business, and I work a lot with them. And what happens is, so they're in construction. They're for like a home renovation shit. So their workers always get paid no matter what. When the workers fuck up and they have to come back an extra day or 2 or 3 to fix their mistakes, that comes out of my parents' pocket because it doesn't come out of the client and it doesn't come out of the paycheck of the worker. The worker, even though they fucked up, are still getting paid for those extra days they have to work. Well, my parents are paying out of pocket for that renovation to be fixed so that the customer's satisfied and that the worker keeps showing up to work. They're not losing shit. They fucked up and they're still getting money. And I mean, if that's just the way that this shit works.
And I mean, that could be adjusted through different employee contracts and things like that. But the ultimate point is that the entrepreneur, the actual owner of the capital, takes on all the risk in the enterprise. The entrepreneur is the one who has to wait for his profit basically while the employees get it immediately, because it is in a way a profit for them still, because they're offering up their services and getting paid something they value more in return, which is their wage. If they didn't value it more than they valued their time and their labor, then they wouldn't do it in the first place. It wouldn't happen as an exchange.
No,
so we know they're making a profit off of it.
Yeah,
essentially,
you can always understand that some people are stuck in a job because they can't find another one, and they may not be getting paid exactly what they want. But it's like it's not a forever thing. Like there's always going to be other opportunities at some point. Like sure, a small mishap here and there where they're being paid less than what they want and they can't go to another job is going to happen. It's going to happen to all of us at some point, I'm sure. But
yeah,
that's not one. Just because that one incident happens occasionally, like very rarely, and for a short amount of time, does not mean the entire system is flawed. It just means they happen to have some bad luck.
Yeah, and it's not even like that they're stuck with that job because there's nothing else that they like. It's that there's nothing else that they value more than that job. I mean, there's always another job to take, but it's still the value thing where it's like, well, the other jobs they could take, they value less than the one they have now and would rather have their free time and not get paid shit and then sink than take those jobs, but they would still rather keep their job than go under. So still a value thing. Like they're
And
still
even if they
making the
didn't-
active decision.
Even if they still didn't have a job they want and they wanted to start their own business, well, they kind of couldn't in our current system, since there's so many fines and regulations in starting up a
Right.
business.
In a real
Like,
free market, there would be no institutional barriers to credit access, which is how you would finance, buying capital or whatever that you need for your business startup. And two, there would just be more employment options in general. You wouldn't be as limited because there wouldn't be any regulations as well. So if you weren't pleased with one job, there would be more options for you to switch to another one. There's just more competition, and that leads to better outcomes for everybody.
Yeah. And okay, so I've had a lot of discussions with like left-leaning people about wages, where it's like whatever alternative they come up with that does not involve abolishing currency always comes back to a wage. Like, I'm a professional troll, so I have hobby and agorist in my bio because I know that's going to piss a lot of people off, and I actually did. Someone took the bait like 2 weeks ago and started trying to debate me. One of those assholes that's friends with Monty's favorite person, right, Monty?
Yeah.
So this dense asshole doesn't realize this is a troll and comes in my fucking thing, and he's trying to debate me on this shit. And number one, I'm schooling him with a fake ideology. Like, it was better than his real
Fake
ideology.
ideology.
Yeah, there's no fucking hobby and agorism, but it's just. And this one of his hangups was wage labor, and basically, like, I just hold his hand through it, and it just shows like there was no alternative he made that does not come back to wage labor. Like, even if you go into Konkin's writings and you look at like the shit he says about private defense agencies, it's like, even if those are salary employees, that is still a wage, because a wage is just what you agree upon for the work you do. That's what you get paid that you agree upon. So a salary, a commission salary, it's like, yeah, you're not getting a steady hourly wage, but your wage is what's agreed upon for the conditions of what you do with your service. And they can never find a way around this. As long as you're going to pay people for work, you are going to have wages. And people just flat out are not likely to work if they don't get some form of compensation. Peter, your typing is very loud.
Yeah, I might have to mute myself when I do that.
Yeah, how about you do that?
And Konkin preferred collective ownership of companies and stuff like that. He didn't like wage labor, but he also did believe in the non-aggression principle. I think we should make that clear. He didn't believe in using violence to prevent it necessarily. He thought he had different theories on why it would be eradicated in a free market, which I to a large extent disagree with, but he still didn't believe in violating the non-aggression principle to forcefully prevent employers from hiring people if they wanted to, stuff like that. Konkin was not an anarcho-communist in that sense.
No, God, with this dude, I told him that you could use covenant communities to make sure that there's no wage labor in your in your Agora community.
I still don't know how you would abolish that. So everyone owns their own single store, and then I guess there would be one carpenter who doesn't employ anybody, and then one baker, and then one of this and one of that. But then that's
it's really wonky. Somehow he thought the market would just push out that sort of behavior. I personally don't fucking get it, but some people apparently still think wage labor is slavery.
It is.
I don't know. It is. Yeah, dude, I'm such a slave when I go flip burgers for McDonald's. But what else? What other discussions did you have with these communists, Andrew?
Back to the whole minor example. That wasn't the only thing I said. They also asked me the questions like, how do you justify the capitalist owning the capital and not the people using it? It was like, well, the capitalist provides the tools for the workers to use to make the product. And like I said before, the product, whatever they are making, whatever it may be, let's use the iPhones, for example, they may only need one iPhone, but they don't need every single iPhone they have. So instead, they just get paid in a form of currency, whether it be a dollar or yuan or yen, whatever the Chinese use, or Bitcoin or whatever else ANCAP land would come up with. Um, they'd rather have that than the iPhone. And then of course I explained that is why the workers probably wouldn't have the product itself to sell, but I push it back. Then hold on, I'm confusing myself. Hold on. Look, I
Here,
swear
I'll
I'm
interject
retarded.
here because I have something to add to that point. Um,
Yeah.
That's not only is this not a bad thing, like the fact that workers can get paid to make multiple iPhones and only keep one of them, only buy one of them, and sell the rest, basically sell them to their employer. Um, Not only is that not a bad thing, we should actively promote it as a good thing because the division of labor is the core of civilization, the core of economic progress, and that's what that is. If you had to make your own iPhone and then make your own food, then build your own house, clean your own water, you know, everything you used you had to make yourself. That's we have a word for that. It's called extreme poverty.
Yeah. Yeah, there was one dude on YouTube who tried building his own toaster with existing materials. So this wasn't even that he like had to mine the metal out of the earth and all that. And it still took him a fucking year just to build a toaster. So if he
There's a
had
guy,
to
it might be the same guy who tried to
Probably.
make a sandwich, like I
Oh,
think
from
it's like
scratch,
a ham
yeah.
and lettuce sandwich or something.
Yeah, and that also took him forever.
From scratch. He like grew the wheat himself, stuff like that, and it took him over a year and $1,300 to make a sandwich.
Didn't he have
Whereas-
to also travel like the ocean or something, or was that
Yeah,
some
he had
other
to go.
guy?
I don't remember exactly where he went, but he had to travel a bunch of places too.
What a mess, dude. Like, I'm sorry. Look, if in a communist system I can't get a ham sandwich in like not even a minute, and for like $1, I'm sorry. It's just not it. The only thing they sold me on is no urbanites. So I was kind of that's it.
You can have your Anprim Covenant community.
Thank God.
Amprim Covenant communities, all you eat are berries and dead animals.
Goodness.
You sign your contracts with rocks.
Not
You
even
don't sign
rocks.
contracts, you just throw rocks at each other if you do something bad.
Yeah, that's your social pressure. Rocks see you like flame. Everybody, grab rock.
Bring a whole new meaning to being a stoner. Or an old meaning, rather, not really a new one.
Yeah, dude, in Saudi Arabia, everybody is a stoner.
Oh, what a society. Anyway, back to what I was saying, since I have rewired my brain again. I just have to turn it back off and back on again like a computer.
You really are blonde, not ginger.
Yeah, I told you guys. Y'all just don't believe me.
No, you just get annoyed when we call you a ginger. Hey, everybody listens to this show. Go to the iTunes review if you're on iTunes and just put in Andrew's a ginger.
you
No,
really wanna
Andrew,
give us
you
5 stars.
are a ginger. I'm blonde. You're a ginger.
oh my god, this guy.
I mean, your beard is cut. No, your beard.
Okay, wait. Can we let Andrew get to this where he loses train of thought again?
Anyway, I made the same connections. Like obviously, I made the iPhone or the final product. I didn't say iPhone, but the final product example, and then earlier I connected it to the people working in the mines example. Like the people working in the mines sell their labor in exchange for currency because they don't need the actual minerals they're mining. They sell it to the employer. The employer then sells those minerals to a refinery. The same process happens. The refinery workers get paid a currency because they don't need the refined minerals, and then it goes on to the next thing. And the refined minerals make the tools. The tools get sold to the, say, iPhone manufacturer, the capitalist, as the word would be used. They buys the tools, aka the capital, to make the iPhones, and then the workers using those tools that was provided for by the capitalist, so they're in the ownership of the capitalist, then sell their labor in exchange for currency rather than however many iPhones they make that day. Like
Yeah.
there's when you're at a negotiation table with an employer, you're not only selling your labor, you're selling your potential work efficiency. Like you're selling what labor you have now, what labor you have proven in the past, and then when you actually start working, you're also selling how many iPhones you can make. And you're selling those like they belong to you in a sense, but you choose what's the word? Pre whatever like comes before. Look, I'm retarded.
No
Turn off
shit.
the thought again. Come back in a second.
You choose Just
Have
sell
you
those-
tried to turn it on and off again?
you choose to sell those iPhones in advance. That's not the word I was looking for. I don't even think the word I was looking for even exists. That's how
I
shows
don't think so either.
But you sell them in advance before you even start making them, and that's just how it is. But for some reason they couldn't see that connection, even though I laid it out for them very easily. And it was easy to read. I didn't give any jargon. I didn't do anything of that, and they were like, surplus value, wage labor bad. Grr.
It's like, okay, so what are the alternatives? Because you're not
Work
eliminating the
abolition,
market.
150 people-sized communes.
Yeah. No, but you're not my point is you're not like eliminating any form of market. People are still going to need resources that they're not going to be producing, and there's going to be other people producing. So if you don't have some form of a price system, you're back to bartering. And bartering is one of the most inefficient ways to distribute resources in a society. It's so better than central planning, but it's terrible because let's say I somehow am able to produce iPhones all by myself, and I have the one I need. I don't need any more than that. Well, how many iPhones can somebody else need? Everybody needs one phone. So what service am I to somebody if all I can offer is
We got
phones?
2 phones.
Yeah, okay, well, for the drug dealers in a community, they need a second phone. Or maybe
Respect
even
the
three.
Agora, Jay.
Well, in this free market, they wouldn't be illegal, so they wouldn't need a burner phone.
You're right. You're right.
So they would still need one phone only. And so, how many phones? And it's the same thing with chairs, with tables, with eggs, with meat. How much can I offer somebody before I am no longer useful and can get what I need? Like, if you produce eggs and I produce chairs, and you produce 50 eggs a day and I produce 2 chairs a day, and I need some eggs, well, I offer you up a chair. And I come back tomorrow, and you still need a second chair. So I get more eggs. But what happens when you have a full dining set? How many chairs do you need? I still need eggs. And then you repeat this all over town. And eventually everybody has fucking chairs. They don't need any more chairs. So either I have to give up my expertise or I starve and I have to find something else to do. Whereas with a price system, suddenly we have this mutually agreed upon thing that allows us to exact a trade. So we don't have to get it in the good we immediately produce. Like, you give me this currency, I can go get whatever I need from anybody and they're going to accept it. They don't have to give me something of theirs that I don't need. So if you abolish money from this equation, people are going to be left to bartering, and then you're just going to have this fucking mess where people are either starving or they develop their own price system because barter just does not last for that exact reason that eventually everybody has more of what they need and then they don't have what they need. Well, it doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work.
I can give a real life example of the bartering system that happens in my town, actually.
All right.
So my mother is an optometrist, an eye doctor. And of course, she knows just about everyone in the town because it's a small town, and everyone usually knows the doctor. But in this case, it's an eye doctor, so everyone knows her. And there's, Lord forgive me for saying this, but there's a decently large Freemasonry presence in my town. There's a Masonic lodge here in town. There's a lot of the men are a part of it.
What does the airport look like in Birmingham?
Not that bad. It's just kind of chill. It's just kind of there. In fact, we were supposed to have the airport that was in Atlanta, but we turned it down for whatever reason.
And got your own?
But so my mom, she is the eye doctor, obviously, so she's serving just about everyone in the town. But of course, when she comes across one of the Freemason people, or even if they're not in the Freemason, if people own their own business, she tends to get their services in exchange for eye care. But of course, her eye care can only go so far, and then their services go a lot further. So take, for example, the vet that we go to, the veterinarian. My mom sees his family for eye care services, and we go to him for veterinary services. But we go to him a lot more than he goes to my mom for eye care. So the amount of stuff that we've gotten from him far exceeds in objective value as far as like how much those things cost altogether, like medicines, surgeries for our animals and stuff like that, far exceeds the value of whatever eye checkup and maybe a pair of glasses that we've given them. And that's just through bartering. But if we did it through just the currency thing, now granted they're doing it because they're nice, so it's different. But in a full system, that's how it would be very similar to that. One side would be giving up a lot more than the other. Sure, the value is still subjective, but eventually you're going to be overusing resources that you wouldn't formerly need to.
Yeah, because it's all in marginal utility. I mean, this is shit that I'm surprised you even learn in mainstream economics, but this is shit you learn in like principles of microeconomics, that you reach a point where you have diminishing returns from what you're getting. Like with the milk example they love to give, or slices of cake. You know, one slice of cake, you're hungry, you want something sweet and tasty, you're happy. 2 slices, okay, you're reaching your limit already, unless you're a fat ass, I guess. You know, in America, it might be up to 10 slices, I don't know. But you get to 3 slices, 4 slices. And it's like at a point where you don't want to eat the whole fucking cake. And that's your diminishing marginal returns. The same shit goes, how many eye checkups can you get? How many pairs of glasses can you get? Like, what is your mom, the optometrist, going to keep offering if people stop needing it? Like, in reality, you probably don't even need like an eye checkup once a year. You only go when your eyes are acting up or you need a prescription or something.
Yeah, I mean, they do it here in the town because it's kind of just a nice thing to do. Like, we all know each other. You know, it's not like it happens widespread, but for her, like other families that she sees, it happens. Like the Asian guy that owns the Chinese restaurant in town, like we'll get free food whenever we go. Sure, we barely even go. So that means my mom's giving a lot more in value with the eye checkups than we are taking from him. So we don't really care, granted. It's just how we do things. But that's how the bartering thing works. Like, it works for us because we don't care. But on a grand system like that, it would not work over a long period of time. And I
Yep.
say the Freemason thing is important because the Freemason thing is kind of like a fraternal society / conspiracy theorist group that's planning to overthrow the world or something.
Doing a very poor job at it.
Yeah, I know. They've been failing that for the past like 200 years or so.
More.
300
Like,
More,
yeah.
300, yeah.
They've been just as
about
effective as
300.
all those libertarians in DC that people complain about.
I know, right?
Actually, it is over 300 years because I believe it was 1717 when they formally became a thing. So that's pretty interesting. And of course, that's if I got my dates correct.
Yeah, but you're a dumb blonde, so you probably didn't.
Look, I'm also the only history nerd here, so I don't want to hear it.
Hey, I'm a history nerd too. I just don't have enough to run a fucking history podcast, retard.
But I mean, yeah, that's just how the bartering thing. And I mentioned the Freemason because one, it's a fraternal society. They tend to do the same thing just within their group, but it's just getting outside their group because of the influence that they have just within their group. So that's why I mentioned the Freemason thing, the bartering.
Yeah.
And to continue the criticism of commies, the way they identify the means of production as something that sounds evil, I guess, in their rhetoric, they don't explicitly call it out until it becomes wage labor. But you can tell they don't like the idea of private property and the means of production at all, obviously. But just like the means of production, that phrase is derogatory in a way because it implies power where I don't think there is any, because there's no inherent power just in owning something. It's only valuable to the extent that it produces something that everyone else values. So the people who own the means of production don't inherently have any power unless they can serve other people with them, which I don't see how that's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's back to the thing with Jay and his chair company. He has the means to make the chair, has the means of those production, but just because he owns it privately doesn't mean he's worth shit to anyone.
Yeah.
He's not. He's useless. Everyone has their chairs. He is now being thrown to the side and has no more power, so to speak, if you want to put it that way, within that community. He's worthless. He's going to starve now.
And the communists just have such a poor understanding of capital. I mean, again, going back to Man, Economy, and State, Rothbard talks about what capital is, and it's not some separate thing from labor. It's something that makes labor more efficient. I mean, you can do a lot of labor without capital, but you're not going to produce a whole lot. The capital is there to make labor more efficient. And if these laborers aren't running their own businesses, this isn't something they're doing at home for fun. They don't need this capital. I mean, again, going back to my parents' company, if you work in construction, what purpose does a construction worker have to own the capital they need? I mean, if you're into high-rise construction, why would the laborer need to own a crane, for example? What are they going to do with that outside of their work? Why would they need that? Why would they waste their money on that? They're not going to subcontract and carry a crane around everywhere. It makes sense for the business to have that, but then there are some things where, you know, if you have a company where you subcontract, so we subcontract a guy with a bobcat, which is like a giant backhoe, and he owns his own bobcat, but it makes sense because he subcontracts. If he didn't subcontract, he would have no purpose for the bobcat.
And how do I want to say this? The extension of labor part, Like that's an important thing to note, that capital isn't really a separate thing, because the implication there is that labor is a means of production. and so it's especially dangerous when communists say they want to seize the means of production, because that should set off alarm bells for everybody. That's a direct threat to your liberty. That's what they mean.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to seize you, and they're threatening slavery essentially, which of course they would deny if you said it out loud to them. But that's essentially what it amounts to, right?
Yeah, and
the distinctions they make between personal property, which they say they're in favor of, and private property are kind of nonsensical anyway. Not just because there's no real clear line, but also because something can be both at the same time. Like there can be, for example, a minivan. Somebody takes their kids to school in a minivan and then provides transportation services, hires himself out as an Uber or something like that in the same minivan. Then all of a sudden the minivan is a means of production for that job, and personal property for taking the kids to school. And which is it? Is it illegitimate when it's driving people around for Uber? And is it legitimate when they're taking kids to school, or what? It's kind of contradictory to have. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah. Or let's say this, because there's this meme floating around, right? Let's say you own a house, but then you rent out the basement. Is that house no longer your private property because your personal property, and it becomes private property, which they don't respect because you're renting somebody out to your basement?
Yes,
like,
because now
do they now own the basement? Like,
yes, because you're a landlord parasite now, and Mao was right, and you should be killed because you dared provide somebody with cheap housing. And I mean, this is something that the Ancoms won't really realize that, but because where was I going with this? To what Porter was saying before the minivan thing, that the Ancoms, they want to seize the means of production, but they don't realize the implications of that. And some of them disavow the Soviet Union, some don't. When you look at the Soviet Union, I mean, that's exactly what that was. Seizing the means of production was seizing human labor and forcing them into different things.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that a lot of people credit Stalin for, somehow in mainstream economics, for pulling Russia out of being a backwater shithole into an industrialized society, was that he literally took people from the countryside, forced them into the cities, and forced them to work in factories.
You know where else that happened? The United States, with the property tax.
Yep.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
There for you.
Yeah.
All you commies, just anarcho-communists making fun of the Industrial Revolution. You can blame the state for that one too.
But yeah, I mean, these people, they don't. You become the property of the state, and the Ancoms, really. I mean, it's such cliche to say like, oh, you can't have anarchy and communism, but when you understand actual human nature, you realize like, you're still going to need some form of a central ruler to be directing the system. And even they realize that they are going to have some form of government. It's just not going to be the state.
Like, I even had one of them say that, like, imagine thinking anarchy means no government. They literally said that.
Yeah.
Like, what else is it supposed to mean? I mean, sure, like, it directly translates to no hierarchy, but even you having that...
Well, no, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't directly translate no hierarchy.
No
There's
rulers.
different types of anarchy, because there's the French anarchy and there's the American anarchy, and like both have different definitions, and that's where it gets like icky.
Well, yeah, because
Well,
then
the
you
word
get
itself
Not
from
even
Greek.
the French definition or American
Yeah.
definition says there's a government.
Yeah,
So
wait,
I don't
no,
know where
Monty.
this person came from.
Well, the word from Greek is no rulers or without rulers. It's not about hierarchy originally. Well,
Yeah, it's just they, in their view, corporations are also your rulers, so they want to get rid of them. But if these people don't understand economics or human nature or anything, so they don't realize how corporations are a legal fiction and exist with a lot of protection from the state and all that, and they think somehow the corporation precedes the government instead of the other way around, which, I mean, if you want a good example of that not being true, just take a look at what Putin did to the last person who opposed him, who was the CEO of like Gazprom or something. Look where he is now.
that's something they get wrong.
Right. He's
What?
That's where that corporation guy is. Idiot.
In prison. He's in prison.
Yeah, exploiting the masses.
Yeah. Monty, what were you saying?
Well, I think, the corporations are a legal fiction thing, I think there could still be a corporate style similar way to organize
Oh,
without
there
the
is-
state for sure.
yeah, of
There is
course.
common law precedent for limited liability corporations. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Rothbard wrote a
Yeah.
little bit about this, about how creditors, or I mean debtors, that is, people who lend from creditors, could simply declare that a certain portion of their assets is within this company only and is limited to the liability of that company, basically. Obviously, Rothbard explains it better than I'm doing here because I don't remember the exact
Yeah.
quote. But
Yeah.
yeah, there is some common law precedent for that to exist, but there are other legal privileges, I guess, that go along with what the state defines as limited liability right now that are different. Like there are liability caps on oil spills, for example. Like BP only had to pay up to a certain amount from the Gulf oil spill, regardless of how many damages they caused to private
Yeah.
property from that
Yeah.
oil spill. So things like that still are definitely state privilege and absolutely wouldn't exist in a free market.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
and
like I brought up
of course, the ocean would be privatized and too, so
Yeah.
that solves that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
And like I brought up a few episodes ago, or was like weeks ago now, about the sugar lobby down here and what the sugar companies were doing, pumping all of their back something into the rivers, which was causing red tide, which made people sick and was like harming a lot of the ecosystem and was harming people. And they were protected by Rick Scott because he was in bed with the sugar lobby. So in Ancapistan, a company doing that would be sued for the damages they caused, and they would be
There
forced
wouldn't be
to
a
stop doing
government to save them.
it. Yeah, they would be forced to stop doing that.
And then there's
So-
mega corporations like GM. They wouldn't get bailed out because GM should have failed a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
But they've been bailed out countless times already, and they're only alive because of government handouts that go from taxes.
Yeah.
So it's the dumbest thing. Like these mega corporations that hire millions of, probably not millions, but like tens of thousands of people, they would not be able to exist because they require the state to give them money all the time.
And GM would have gone under a long time ago just because of diseconomies of scale. I mean, the second that a company becomes too large, it's very hard for them to start keeping up with all of the market signals that cover a large span of area, and smaller companies that are more localized start to outcompete them. So they have shitty business management and they have diseconomies of scale. Like you said, GM would have gone under a long time ago, but they rely a lot on the state. So I mean, this shit is all really. It all still goes back to the state. And if you're a company that tries to challenge the state, you're out of business. But if you're a company that curries favor with the state and pays politicians, you stay in business and you get privileges. So this communist view that somehow the corporation controls the state, no, they're only half right. I mean, corporations get privilege from the state, but the state has the final say in everything. So,
Ultimately, it's not going to be BP or Apple that sends armed thugs to my house to drag me out and put me in a cage. It's still the state. I mean,
no, Jeff Bezos would start an army and force you to buy his product
yeah.
if
Oh,
we were in a
you also
capstan.
can't forget how Coca-Cola totally killed that guy in Colombia, even though
Oh
Coca-Cola
my
had
God.
nothing to do with it.
Forgot about the MIG militias.
Oh, dude, you did such a good smackdown on that one, dude.
It made me so happy when I found all that information. Should I go over it? Have I gone
Yeah,
over
go.
it in an episode before?
All
No,
right,
I don't
guys,
think
I
you
gotta head
did.
out, but it's been good.
Oh,
See
okay,
y'all
so yeah, see you, Porter. But yeah,
Porter's gonna leave. What a loser.
Yeah. but yeah, dude, we're still good on time, so go ahead.
Oh boy.
Tell us the
Okay.
story.
Let's go. Okay, so a while back, of course, y'all all know the story that Coca-Cola was accused of allegedly, quote unquote, killing a Colombian leftist union leader. Union leader down in a plant they had in Colombia. Well, that's just not true. Correction. Coca-Cola had some connection, but it practically did not exist. The plant was owned by a smaller beverage, or was being run by a smaller beverage company, but Coca-Cola just happened to own it and leased it out to them. This company was based in Florida, and it was not part of Coca-Cola at all. They just happened to lease out the factory in Colombia. So, and at the time, the Colombian Civil War was going on when this happened. So, of course, when the union leaders were ousted for aligning with leftist guerrillas within the country, of course, the factory owner is going to want to protect his property. So, he aligned himself with the right wing paramilitary groups. And when the union leader, after sending multiple letters to both the factory owner and Coca-Cola, the Coca-Cola headquarters, written letters, mind you. So it probably didn't even reach Coca-Cola headquarters because it wasn't an email; it was written letters from practically halfway across the world, speaking north to south.
Uh-huh.
Um, it just Coca-Cola had nothing to do with it. And when the paramilitary groups came in and killed the leftist guerrilla that was obviously a leftist guerrilla, it just made sense. It was part of a civil war. Coca-Cola had nothing to do with it. If you want to blame anyone, blame the individuals in charge of that particular factory, but not the corporation who had nothing to do with it. Like it and if anything, like that's it. I can't even blame the state for that one because it was a civil war. There wasn't a central state to begin with. It was just corrupt individuals in the midst of a civil war. What do you expect? I mean, it's going to happen anywhere, regardless if corporations are involved or at all.
Yeah, and
but
if,
to
Well, you can
blame a
still blame the
corporation for
state.
something that had
of course you
little
still
for
you can
failing
always-
to protect.
You can always
Like that's
blame
their
the-
duty. They assume responsibility.
You can always find a way to blame the state, but we're being honest here.
Yeah, I
like,
Even the state's not a part of that one because there was none. It was just a civil war going on. Of course, they wanted to protect themselves. I mean, technically, I guess to an extent, you could blame Coca-Cola for not having more oversight, but it was a written letter written from Colombia in the middle of a civil war. Do you really think that's going to get to
And
Coca-Cola headquarters in time?
I think you should emphasize that this union leader was also a guerrilla, so his intention was to forcibly strip the factory from its owners who have a legal claim to the land. So for him to act in a violent manner, it's like in the Bible, live by the sword, die by the sword. If you are someone who is trying to forcibly strip somebody of their property, something bad might happen to you. It's not like this was some peaceful hippy-dippy protester running a picket line outside and then Coca-Cola hired mercenaries to come kill this guy. Like you said, it's a civil war and he is a guerrilla leader as well as a union leader, because unions do not have a clean history. They have been very violent.
For whatever commies might be listening to this podcast, I highly doubt it. For anyone who's not a commie and still listening and wanting to know where I'm getting my information, I'm getting it from the legal documents of the court case. I will link it in the description where I got it, because it is the legal documents of the court case. It was not just some opinion article on beinglibertarian.com. It was the legal documents of the court case. This is like the facts of the case I was reading when I was talking to this guy that was accusing Coca-Cola of being a murderous mercenary hiring corporation that killed innocent union leaders. That's it.
And that one is just that one is pushed so much as like a reason that corporations would just be these evil, horrible people that will kill opposition.
Like the only other stories that I've heard are the ones with the banana farms and the sugar plantations in Central and South America, done by corporations. It wasn't done by corporations. It was corporations using the state,
Yeah,
which doesn't care about profit and obviously lost money because, I mean, of course, it doesn't care about gaining money either, and taking over these countries.
yeah,
Like,
and
what do you expect?
yeah, and if you like look into the history of it, these banana companies got the United States to get involved in these countries, in like Nicaragua and I forget where else, Guatemala and Honduras, I believe. And they got the United States to come in and use military force to squash their opposition. So it's not like that these were people that just hired a free market mercenary army and conquered the land. No, they went and used existing states to make themselves a state.
In
So
fact, two things to add on to that. One, a good thing, or both good things, but one related to the topic, one directly related to the topic, and one kind of related to the topic. The thing directly related is that I always hear like if there's no state, the companies will just do it themselves. Really? Do you really think that the United States government with all its military action is near $24 trillion in debt? It might be past that now with all the stimulus packages being done. But if a company lost that much money and it could no longer afford to pay their workers, do you think the workers would even stay there to go
no.
fight for them? No, they're going to go somewhere else. If they're not making a livelihood, why would they stay? It happens now. So of course the company couldn't do that because they cannot afford it. We say this every single time. Rothbard says it. Hop says it. Every single ANCAP on Instagram says
Hop.
it, no matter how retarded they are.
Hop.
Shut up.
Hop.
Eat me.
Damn it! That's another person who got mispronounced. How many people are we on?
Proudhon, Ludwig von
Mutualism.
Mises, Mutualism,
Mooch.
Paleocon, Hop. I
Look,
say
I've already said it 10 times
I say
already.
agorism when it should be agorism.
No, everyone says
A-
agorism.
Yeah, but agorism.
Agorism.
Agor.
Look, I don't even care. I've already said 3 times I'm retarded, and I'll say it again. I'm retarded. I said hop. My apologies. It's hoppa. But the statement still stands. Companies cannot afford it to do it on their own, which is why they use the state who does not care about profit. And the other thing that was slightly related is that the only time that I know of, at least in recent history, where a free market privatized mercenary group has been used was from a Swedish university professor who had hired the mercenary group to go down into ISIS territory and save one of their students. And you know what they did? They went down, saved the student, and had little to no casualties. Don't remember the exact story, but I'm pretty sure there were no casualties. They went in, took the student back home safely. End of story. The state bad, or company's bad, mercenaries bad. Oh no, boo-hoo, scary, scary wage labor slave.
And war is just so fucking expensive. Like you said, the United States has to go into debt to fund our wars. You can't fund, especially a company who doesn't even steal money from people like the government does. Like, they have to get paid. They cannot afford to run a war. Like, what are they going to pay their mercenaries
Do you really
with?
think people are going to buy products from someone who's declaring war on innocent people?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
They're
if
going
Apple went over there and started literally land in Asia, I might support them, but for the most part, most people wouldn't. Like, nobody's going to support that since, well, I want to say a majority of people are anti-war.
It would be like buying
Anti-specific
ISIS brand
war,
Apple.
But it just...
This company would run out of money in a week to fund this war if they even wanted to do that. Like, what extra profit would they get from a war? Like, if Amazon makes money off you buying shit from their website, why would they force you to buy shit from their website? What would even be the point of selling it?
Exactly. Like,
it's mind-boggling. It makes no fucking sense.
It doesn't make any profit motive sense. Like, it wouldn't even be profitable. Then it doesn't make any logical sense.
I've said multiple times. I don't even know if I've said it on the episode, but I've said it in group chats. I've said it in person with friends in real life. I've said it to myself when I'm walking in my room ranting like a madman about random stuff because that's just what I do. People who see those situations like this one situation that may or may not be true proves everything wrong about this thing, or like this one particular thing that I do not like disproves the entirety of our system. You're looking too small. You're looking down a toilet paper roll at the picture that is larger than you could begin to comprehend. Like, you got to think with the big picture. What's really going on? If you look at the big picture, yeah, it's complex, but that doesn't mean you should zoom in on one particular spot and focus and hammer down every single wrong with that one particular situation and think you're going to solve everything. You have to look at the entire picture and how solving that one problem affects everything else. Because solving that one problem, say wage slavery, for example, it may have some good intentions at first, and maybe that one problem is solved for a little bit. I don't know. But what about everything else in society that would collapse shortly afterwards when there's no system to regulate what things get bought and sold between everywhere? The knowledge problem is real. That's why people bring it up. And without something like wages, without money, without a supply and demand system, you're not going to know where things should go at all. People are going to take what they want whenever they want, and it's not going to go to the people who actually need it, which are the people who can buy it, who need to buy it. But they can't do that if there's no system like that because you're looking too small. You got to look at the bigger picture. And I am ranting. I've never been this excited on the podcast before. This is great. I can't. I've lost. I can't say anything else.
This is amazing. This is amazing. So this is what I sound like when I'm drunk ranting.
No, this is what
you sound even
like a madman. Porter's missing out because he's wanted to hear this more than any of.
Well, he'll have to listen to the fucking episode. He'll have to listen.
Like, this is what I sound like in my room. Except now, instead of running around my room ranting like a madman, just waving my arms over. I'm waving my arms now, like Bernie Sanders. Like, it's just what I do. Like, I'd be sitting here doing it now on the podcast. Like,
I'm listening to my shit right now. This is great. I love this,
dude. It's so infuriating.
This is like
probably one of my favorite episodes.
This is like when I was sitting in the car with you, and you were going on this whole ass rant that I can't even remember because it was so complex and so in depth. It made sense at the time, but it's like I can't even. You made so many points that connected, but it's like there were some parts of it like you went on to like how human bodies emit radiation when they're dead, which is why we bury them 6 feet under. Like, this somehow, it fit in there somehow, because it was like this esoteric religious rant, and we're just like driving back from your small town back into Birmingham, and I was and it made sense, and I was listening to it. It's like this. This is beautiful. I love this.
It's so infuriating though, and it doesn't just happen with people on the left. It doesn't just happen with authoritarians on the right. It doesn't just happen with, and it happens everywhere. People look at the small picture too much. They focus on one problem and then ignore the rest. But you have to look at everything. You have to look at everything to see how everything would interact. Like, for example, if you want me to attack Ancaps a little bit, the Boogaloo people. Yes, I get that the state is bad, but you can't just go out and be violent everywhere, because once you're violent, it'll collapse just like every other revolution in history, with the exception, even the American Revolution can be considered a failure to an extent. I mean, sure, the main goal of the revolution was to break away from the British Empire. They did that. That's great. But then, of course, the Articles of Confederation happened. They failed because of bad influence in the government. And of course, the Constitution happens, and the Federalists win essentially, and just expand government power to be just as bad, to, at least at this point, worse than the British Empire than it was ever to be imagined to be back then. So it can be considered a failure. The French Revolution failed because it was originally supposed to be near Marxist almost, even though Marx didn't exist for another 100 years or so.
Mhm.
It was supposed to be like that, a very egalitarian society, almost communal and as a whole. But then what happens? People don't know how to rule themselves because they haven't lived on their own ever, because they always lived under a tyrannical monarch. And then, of course, Napoleon comes in, becomes dictator, and starts imperializing all over them. They attacked Spain, Prussia. They wanted to attack Britain, but failed. They even attempted Russia, just like every other person in history, and failed. And then the French Empire collapsed, and then it became a monarchy again. Then, of course, it went back to republic, then a monarchy, and a republic over and over again. And finally, somehow, it's a republic, but it's almost a monarchy again.
France is a fucking mess. They still have, dude. They still have a monarch. Actually, there is a relation between the French president, every French president, and the Prince of Luxembourg, I believe, or the Prince of Monaco, or something. So there's still technically a monarchy related to the French government.
It's like even the Soviet Revolution, the October Revolution. It was supposed to be a Marxist thing, a classless, moneyless, whatever the other one, stateless society. And look what happened. Lenin got in charge, and of course that was in like the phase from like a collapsed society to a socialist communist one. But then Stalin comes around and becomes
Well, hold on, actually, no. Lenin, originally, they were starving so badly in the early years of communist Russia that Lenin had to introduce markets back to the Soviet Union, or to Soviet Russia. So it was a failure after like 2 years already.
One, because that communism thing just doesn't work, and two, because people aren't ready to rule themselves. And that's why people who are against the Boogaloo are so adamant about that, because people don't understand that. They don't know history. What about every single revolution in history failed because they didn't know how to rule themselves? The American people are not ready to rule themselves, but they don't realize that because they're looking at the small picture. They only have one thing in their targets, and that's the White House. That's the state capitol building. That's the Supreme Court. That's all they look at, but they don't care about anything else because they're maniacs. They're psychopaths. All they care about is violence and killing people.
Yeah,
Senselessly.
order exists. It's like they're short-term minded. They don't think about the long term. They're just stuck thinking about short term.
Exactly. They don't think long term. Nobody does. They don't look at the big picture. They don't think long term. They don't think, wow, each individual action will affect the long term consequences. And that's so infuriating, because it happens not just with politics. It happens with everything. It happens with friendships. It happens with philosophy. It happens with playing video games, for crying out loud. It happens when I'm playing. Like I'm sitting here playing Siege with friends, and everyone's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get this kill," but they don't realize that them doing that gets the entire team killed because they're not watching their back. It's simple stuff like that onto complex things like the entire structure of society or the entire universe in its own existence. It's so mind-boggling that people can't just take a step back for once and really sit down and think about what they're thinking about, and maybe even realize that, hey, maybe there's something they're missing. Maybe there's something more to learn. And it's just so infuriating. Oh my god.
All right, well,
I'm done.
yeah, I think we're wrapping up here. Before we do, I would like to just read out these tweets I saw on Instagram today. Someone screenshotted it about Bernie, bro. So like we said earlier in the episode, Bernie dropped out this week. So I put this up on my story, and some guy tweeted, "Thank you at Bernie Sanders for refunding my $500 donation." So somebody replies, "Really? How do I do that? Is there an email?" "You just have to know the right people in his campaign. Thank God, because I'm so hard up for money right now." So the guy says, "Me too. I did a bad thing. I took out $1,800 in further student loans to send to Bernie. I was thinking my loans will be erased, so no big deal. But I really need that money back now. My landlord can't be held off much longer. If you wouldn't mind sending me the email."
I don't know if you had a father, and if so, I don't know if he's extant. But if so, I hope he didn't see what you did, because I'm confident he would be embarrassed by you. I know I'm embarrassed for you. And if you have a father, I hope that he didn't see what you did, but you have no shame. That's okay. The rest of us have plenty to spare. And I'm confident your father would be ashamed of you. I know I'm ashamed of you.
I hope he doesn't get it. Okay.
He won't. No refunds. No
No,
refunds.
you gotta know the right
my
people.
Lips. Read my lips. No refunds. It all went to my fourth lake house. And my heart surgery. I need another one. This has been very stressful. I will run again in 2024 with a ventilator. And please give me more money. I want a fifth one before I die. Jesus Christ. But this has been a very eventful episode. I actually really like this one.
This
You
is probably
wanna
one of my
close it out,
favorites.
Or you want to close it out?
Yeah, I think we should close it out. So, Andrew, why don't you take the short bus, put it
That's
on the
what I
road?
was asking.
Put the short bus. No, put the ships on the road, man. Come on.
Thank you for watching the Insurrection or listening to the Insurrection Inc. podcast, or watching it if you're on YouTube for whatever reason. This has been the
We actually have quite a few viewers on YouTube lately. I don't know why.
yeah. I'm surprised, but
People
thank you
watch
for
podcasts on
listening To
YouTube.
my rants, thank you for listening to us talk about comments for how long? An hour? Hour and a half?
Yeah, about an hour.
Yeah.
Not on the dot.
Thank you for tolerating us. Tell your friends about this. We want some more listeners. We're not trying to make
Yeah.
money off this. We're doing it for fun, but we want our dopamine injections to go
Yeah, we do.
bigger. So please get more people watching it. Get more people to like the episodes on every single platform we have: Spotify, Castbox, YouTube.
Actually, we're off Castbox because we're getting no views on there.
Okay.
Or no, it was. I don't remember. There was one that I took off. But yeah, Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube,
Google Play even.
Yeah, share us if you're on iTunes. Give us give us a rating, give us a review, share it on
Yeah,
YouTube. Give us a
we'll start
like,
reading
subscribe.
reviews and comments from YouTube.
Yeah.
soon. We'll make that
Yeah.
an episode thing.
Yeah, if you guys are funny, we'll actually do that. So
Yeah.
leave a funny review, give us 5 stars, share us, and thank you guys for talking more. This episode I actually talked less than I normally do, so that's refreshing.
That's because I was ranting the whole time.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
all those episodes that I missed have been building up to this moment.
This was you haven't nutted in like a week, and this was your big nut.
I'm gonna apologize in advance because someone was gonna be annoyed by that.
No, dude, this was beautiful. This was fucking beautiful. So thank you guys for listening. See you next time. Oh yeah, and also the semester's wrapping up for a few of us, so we're gonna have more work. We might be putting out 1 episode a week for the next 2 or 3 weeks, but
Yeah.
you guys aren't complaining, I guess.
You don't
All
have
10
to
of you.
complain.
So yeah. So see you guys later.